Have you ever found yourself in a situation where the truth was a little more complex, a little more painful than you ever imagined? Imagine dedicating your life to your family, to a promise, only to find out that everything you thought was real was a carefully constructed lie. This story is not just about money or inheritance. It's about the betrayal that shatters a soul, the kind that makes you question everything and everyone you've ever trusted. It's a story about a brother, a crumbling house, and a document that was supposed to represent a legacy, but was nothing more than a carefully crafted forgery. It's a tale of greed so deep, it could rip apart the very foundation of a family. I want you to put yourself in his shoes. What would you do if the people you loved most turned their backs on you, using your love and loyalty against you? Would you have the strength to fight for what's right, even if it meant exposing the dark secrets hidden in the heart of your own family? Stick with me until the end, because this story will make you question the true meaning of family and loyalty, and it will challenge everything you think you know about justice. My parents weren't exactly rich, but they had a solid legacy. A small house in the city where I grew up, and a large, beautiful country estate where my brother, Mark, lived. My whole life, it was understood that Mark, being the older son, would inherit the estate and I would get the city house. We never questioned it. It was the way things were, a silent agreement we all lived by. I dedicated my life to taking care of our parents as they grew older, sacrificing my own dreams and career to be there for them. Mark, on the other hand, was always a little more self-serving. He rarely visited, and when he did, it was always for some new business venture or a favor he needed. I remember my father's last days so clearly. He was weak, but his mind was sharp as a tack. He held my hand and told me how grateful he was for everything I had done, how I was the true heart of our family. I thought his words were a final blessing, a confirmation of the quiet understanding we shared. My mother, too, would often tell me how proud she was of my selflessness, how I was her rock. I never once doubted their love or their intentions. Their affection and gratitude were my inheritance, the only one I ever truly wanted. But the day the will was read, it felt like all those promises turned to dust. The lawyer, a stiff man with thin lips, laid it all out. The estate, a sprawling piece of land with a historic house, was left entirely to Mark. The city house, my home, was also given to him. I was left with a tiny, crumbling cottage on the outskirts of the property, a place that was barely standing and had no sentimental value whatsoever. My entire life, my dedication, my love, was reduced to a pile of rubble. I couldn't breathe. My brother sat there with a smug look on his face, a look I had never seen before. He acted surprised, but I could see the triumph in his eyes. He tried to offer me some money for my troubles, as if my worth could be measured in cash. I walked out of that room, leaving him there with his stolen victory and the lawyer's condescending gaze. I didn't say a word because words felt meaningless in the face of such betrayal. I just drove to that little cottage, the one that was supposed to be my inheritance, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely and utterly alone. The cottage was a mess, full of damp air and rotting wood. I tried to make sense of it all, but the betrayal was a physical weight on my chest. How could they? How could my parents, who had always shown me so much love, do this to me? It was a question that haunted my every waking moment. The house stood as a constant reminder of my brother's greed and my parents' baffling choice. I spent my days just staring at the peeling paint and the broken windows, trying to piece together a reality that no longer made sense. My brother, Mark, would occasionally call, not to apologize, but to check in on the property and make sure I wasn't causing trouble. He treated me like a caretaker, not a brother.
He was already planning renovations for the estate, talking about turning it into a luxury resort. His voice was filled with the joy that felt like a slap in the face. He was living my life with my inheritance, while I was trapped in a crumbling shack, haunted by the ghosts of a love that I now realized was nothing more than a beautiful lie.
The days bled into weeks, and the weeks into months. I spent most of my time at the cottage, trying to fix it, to make it feel like a home. It was a pointless effort, a distraction from the deep ache in my heart. One day, while tearing down a wall in the cottage, I found a small wooden box hidden behind a loose brick. It was old and dusty, and when I opened it, I found a stack of letters tied with a ribbon, all addressed to me. They were from my parents. I sat there on the dusty floor and read every single one. My mother's handwriting was delicate and elegant, full of affection and love. She wrote about her hopes and dreams for me, how she wished I would find true happiness. My father's letters were more practical, but filled with the same kind of love. He wrote about his pride in me, his gratitude for my sacrifices, and he spoke of a secret he had kept from Mark, a secret that was meant for me alone. The final letter was from my father, written just a week before he passed. It was a letter full of sadness and regret. He wrote that he and my mother knew Mark had been pressuring them, manipulating them, and that they had to create a new will to protect me. He explained that the official will, the one that left everything to Mark, was a decoy. My mother had written a secret will, a codicil that named me as the sole heir to the estate and the city house. He wrote that he hid it in a place where only I would find it, a place that was special to us both. I was stunned. The crumbling cottage wasn't a punishment. It was a clue, a secret handshake between my father and me. The box, the letters, the hidden will, it was all a part of their plan. They knew Mark would be furious, that he would stop at nothing to get what he wanted, and they had created this elaborate scheme to protect me, to ensure that I would receive what was rightfully mine. I had spent so much time grieving, mourning a love I thought was lost, and all along it had been right there, hidden in plain sight. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. My brother wasn't just a greedy opportunist, he was a master manipulator. My parents knew it, and they had to resort to a plan so complex it took their deaths to reveal it. The letters were filled with codes and symbols that only I would understand, references to old family jokes and memories that Mark was never a part of. The plan was flawless, but it was also a testament to the deep, silent war that had been raging in our family for years, a war that I had been completely oblivious to. I read the final line of my father's last letter over and over again. "The truth is hidden in the silence, my son. Look for it where you least expect it." I spent the next few days tearing through the cottage, searching every inch, every corner, every loose brick. I was no longer a grieving son. I was a detective on a mission. The clues in the letters led me to the attic, to an old, dusty chest that my father had always called his treasure chest. I remembered him telling me stories about how it was a pirate's chest, full of gold and jewels. I had never believed him, but now the memory felt different, significant. The chest was locked, but my father had included a clue to the key's location in one of the letters. The key to the treasure is where the sun sleeps. I knew what that meant. My father and I used to watch the sunset together from the porch of the main house. We had a secret spot, a loose floorboard on the far end of the porch. It was our spot, our special place. I knew the key would be there. I drove back to the estate, and with my heart pounding in my chest, I found the loose floorboard and pried it open. And there it was, a small, rusted key. It was a simple key, but it felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I raced back to the cottage and unlocked the chest. Inside, nestled beneath a collection of old photographs and a few sentimental trinkets, was the codicil, a meticulously crafted legal document with my mother's signature and a notary seal. It was dated a week before my parents passed away. It was all there, a testament to their love and their plan to protect me from my brother's greed. This wasn't just a document. It was a final, loving gesture from two people who knew they were running out of time. I stared at the document for a long time. It was a piece of paper, but it was also a promise. The promise that my love and dedication had not gone unnoticed, that I was not crazy for thinking my parents loved me. It was a promise that justice would be served and that my brother would not get away with his deceit. The cottage, once a symbol of my sadness, was now a monument to my parents' love and wisdom. It was a fortress of truth. If this story has already touched you in some way, leave a like now and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Because what happened next was a lesson in how the truth, no matter how long it's hidden, always finds a way to reveal itself. It was a lesson in silent justice. With the codicil in hand, I went to a new lawyer, a family friend who had always been close to my parents. I explained everything, and he was as shocked as I was. He confirmed that the codicil was a legitimate document and a legal counter to the will my brother had presented. The lawyer called Mark's lawyer and explained the situation. The battle was on. But this time, I had the truth on my side. The news hit my brother like a brick. He was furious. He called me, screaming, accusing me of faking the codicil, of trying to steal what was rightfully his. He called me a fraud, a thief, and a liar. But his words had no power over me anymore. I knew the truth, and his anger was just a confirmation of his guilt. He couldn't deny what he had done, so he resorted to what he always did: manipulation and lies. He threatened to sue me, to expose me to the world, to make my life a living hell. I told him I was not afraid. "You're living in a glass house, Mark," I said, "and I'm about to throw a stone." He didn't say anything after that. He just hung up. The silence on the other end of the line was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. The tables had turned, and he knew it. He had a few days to make a decision, a choice between fighting a losing battle or surrendering. And I knew, deep down, he would never give up without a fight. His pride and greed were too strong. He filed a lawsuit, of course. The court date was set for a few weeks later. The process was slow and frustrating, but I was ready for it. I had my parents' letters as evidence of their love and their plan. My lawyer was an expert, and he was on my side. We had the truth, and that was all that mattered. Mark, on the other hand, had nothing but his lies. He tried to discredit me, to paint me as a liar and a manipulator. But my lawyer was always one step ahead. He knew how to expose the truth, how to make the lies crumble. The day of the trial was a blur. My brother sat across from me, looking pale and nervous. He tried to avoid my gaze, but I just stared at him, my eyes filled with a sadness he couldn't comprehend. The sadness wasn't for me, it was for him. It was a sadness for a brother I had lost long ago, for a family that had been ripped apart by his own hands. He had everything, and yet he wanted more. He had a brother who loved him, but he was willing to throw it all away for a piece of land. The judge asked Mark to testify. He tried to lie, to spin a tale of a loving relationship with our parents, a relationship that I had ruined with my selfishness. But my lawyer had all the evidence, all the facts. He had the codicil, the notarized document. He even had a witness, the notary public who had sealed the document from my mother. The truth was unassailable. My brother's carefully constructed world of lies was starting to crumble right before his eyes. The judge looked at the evidence, listened to the witnesses, and made his decision. He declared the codicil valid, and the original will, the one my brother had presented, null and void. The estate and the city house were mine.
The small, crumbling cottage was also mine. But most importantly, the truth was mine. Mark sat there in shock, his face a mask of disbelief. He had lost, not just the money, but his dignity, his reputation, and the last shred of respect he had from me.
The judge's gavel came down, and with it, the finality of the decision. Mark was in a state of shock, his face ashen. He had built his whole life around this lie, this supposed inheritance, and it had all come crashing down in a single moment. I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt a profound sadness. It was the sadness of seeing someone so blinded by greed that they would destroy everything they had, including the bonds of family. My brother was a stranger to me now, a man I had known my whole life but didn't recognize anymore. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. My lawyer was brilliant, and he handled everything with professionalism and care. Mark, on the other hand, tried to appeal, to fight for a lost cause, but it was all in vain. He had no evidence, nothing but his word against a carefully crafted, notarized document. The truth had won, and there was nothing he could do about it. The city house was mine, the estate was mine, and the little cottage, a symbol of my journey, was also mine. I was the sole heir. I went to the estate a few days later, a place that now felt like a foreign country to me. The sprawling gardens, the historic house, the memories that once lived there felt tainted by my brother's deceit. I walked through the rooms, and I could almost hear my parents' voices, their laughter, their love. But I could also hear the echo of my brother's lies, his manipulation, his greed. It was a victory, yes, but it was a bittersweet one. I had won the inheritance, but I had lost a brother. The real surprise came a few days later when I went to the city house. My brother had been living there, waiting for the legal battle to be over. He had packed his things and left, but he had left a letter for me on the kitchen table. I opened it, my hands shaking. The letter was short, but it was more honest than anything I had ever heard from him. He apologized for his actions, for his greed, for his lies. He confessed that he had been so consumed by jealousy and resentment that he couldn't see anything else. He said that he had faked the will because he always felt like I was the favorite, the one who was truly loved by our parents. He had seen their silent affection for me and felt like he was losing a silent competition he never even knew he was in. He ended the letter with a single line that broke my heart. I wanted to be you, to have what you had, but I was too blind to see that I had everything I needed. I had you, and I threw it all away. The letter wasn't an excuse, it was a confession. It was the first honest thing he had said in years. The betrayal was still there, the pain was still there, but now there was a tiny crack in the wall of his pride, a glimpse of the brother I had lost. I still had the love of my parents, their legacy, but I no longer had a brother. That was a far greater loss than any house or piece of land could ever be. I thought about his words for a long time. He was so consumed by what he didn't have that he destroyed what he did have. It was a lesson, not just for him, but for me. The inheritance was a test, a final act of love from my parents. They knew what my brother was capable of, and they gave me the tools to fight back, to stand up for myself. They didn't just leave me a house, they left me a life lesson. A lesson in truth, in loyalty, and in the power of silent, unwavering love. I had to learn the hard way that sometimes the greatest treasures are not found in gold or land, but in the truth that sets you free. With the legal battle finally over, I was faced with a new challenge: what to do with the inheritance? the city house felt strange to me now. It was no longer a home, but a battleground. The estate was a beautiful place, but it was haunted by the ghosts of my family's past. I thought about selling it all, starting a new life, a clean slate. But a part of me knew that I couldn't just walk away. My parents had fought so hard to leave me this legacy, and I couldn't just throw it away. I had to do something that would honor their memory and their love. I went back to the little cottage, the one that had been the key to everything. It was still in ruins, a symbol of the brokenness I had felt, but it was also a monument to the truth, a place where my parents' love had been revealed. I decided to restore it, to fix the rotting wood, to repair the broken windows, to make it beautiful again. It was a slow and painstaking process, but every nail I hammered, every coat of paint I applied, felt like a step towards healing. It was a way of honoring my parents, of turning a symbol of pain into a symbol of hope. I also made a decision about the estate. I didn't want to sell it. Instead, I decided to turn it into a foundation, a place for young artists and writers to come and find inspiration. I named it The Legacy of Truth in honor of my parents. It was a way of giving back, of turning a place of greed and deceit into a place of creativity and hope. I used the money from the city house to fund the foundation, and I put a small portion aside for myself, enough to live a comfortable life. I didn't need the rest. My greatest inheritance was not the money or the land, it was the truth. My brother, Mark, was living a new life in another state. We didn't talk much, but we occasionally exchanged a few emails. He told me that he was working at a coffee shop, that he had a small apartment, and that he was finally happy. He said that losing the inheritance had been the best thing that ever happened to him. It had forced him to face his own demons, to confront the man he had become. He was starting over, and for the first time in his life, he was living an honest life. He had lost everything, but he had found himself. The story of my family is a complex one, filled with betrayal, love, and a silent battle for the truth. It's a story of how a house, a simple piece of land, can become a symbol of so much more. It's a story of how the greatest inheritance is not what you receive, but what you become. And it's a story of how sometimes the truth is not what you see, but what you feel, what you know in your heart to be true, even when the world is telling you otherwise.
And so, we arrive at the end of this journey, a journey that began with a lie and ended with the truth. It's a powerful lesson, isn't it? About how the things we chase, the titles, the money, the recognition, are often the very things that lead us astray. The brother who had everything was so consumed by his need for more that he lost the one thing that truly mattered, the love of his family. And the brother who was left with nothing found a truth more valuable than any inheritance. He found a purpose. He discovered that a legacy isn't about what you're given, but what you build with the pieces you have. Remember that. Remember that the greatest battles are often fought in silence, and the most profound victories are the ones that happen within. This story isn't just about a fake will or a crumbling house. It's about the house we build within our own soul. It's about choosing to stand for what's right, even when the world tells you it's a lost cause. It's about realizing that the inheritance your loved ones truly leave you isn't in a bank account, but in the lessons they taught you, the values they instilled, and the love that remains long after they're gone. So, I invite you to contemplate this. What if the very thing you think you've lost is the very thing you were meant to find? What if the crumbling house in your life is actually a secret map, guiding you to a treasure you never knew existed? The unconscious is always inviting you to look inside, and I invite you to continue this journey with me. If you were moved by this story, if something within you was awakened, then don't leave me alone on this path. This isn't just a channel, it's a community of seekers, a place where we explore the hidden truths of our own psyche. Join our community of seekers. Subscribe and let's continue to explore the mysteries of life together.